Welcome to the Industry Angel Podcast. We hear from the best business minds across the globe. Entrepreneurs, social influencers, marketing mavens, and sales rock stars. We've got them all. Here comes your weekly dose of inspiration with your host, Ian Farah.
To do a brief introduction to our panel, I'm going to ask our panel to join us on stage now, if that's okay, please. You want to come and grab a seat? What we're going to do this is we're going to do an introduction to each of our panel members, and then we're going to ask each of our panel members to give you their 5-minute overview of technology, of what's happening in the world, and how technology is going to influence sales going into the future. Now, I've completely left this open to them all. I have no idea what they're going to say, but what I want you guys to do is have a think about your specific questions and your thoughts, the areas that you want to cover, and the things that you really want to ask these guys as part of today's session. When we get to the Q&A session, we're going to pass a microphone round. The idea is we're going to try and record today's session. Ian, at the very last minute, when I phoned him yesterday afternoon, Suzanne's like, I know what you're going to ask me. You're going to ask me to record tomorrow's session, aren't you? Yeah. And he stepped up and said, yes, no problem. So we're going to pass a microphone round. I don't think we need a microphone in here, but it'll just help us pick up the recording as we go. Does it sound okay? Yep. We'll take a short break after the panel discussion. Kate, fortunately for her, not for us, is in much demand and has to scoot off, so won't be here for the wrap-up session. She's off to another speaking gig because that's what she does. But we'll bring everybody back together for final thoughts and ideas before we do a tiny bit of final networking and disappear. Does that sound okay? Yep. Has everybody had a cup of tea? Yes. Has everybody had a peg speakers with catered for 80? 60 booked, 30 turned up. Right? It all goes on with my pockets full, is that right?
Sounds right.
Fabulous. And I was looking at some of the pieces we want to cover today. And what was fascinating is, because I'm like, get in touch with Newsme. I don't think we'd be quite this high. I was fascinated looking at the news this morning. There was 2 technology articles that really stood out to me. Number one, Facebook were in the news for targeting ads that were kind of basically sexist in their approach. Did anybody catch this morning? They've been targeting ads where they've been advertising traditionally male-oriented jobs just to men. Because obviously you can target adverts on Facebook, so there's a big discussion about whether that's ethical, moral, right, use of technology. And the second bit was the committee that have been back to the government to advise on cryptocurrency. And this is kind of a hot topic about regulation, whether it should be regulated as a product or not. And actually they've started saying, and if you caught us today, they're saying they shouldn't be called cryptocurrencies now, they should be called crypto assets. Hey, the world's moving fast for me. So there's a couple of things to get us started, and what I'd like to do is introduce each individual, and I'm going to give them their 5 minutes, and if you can have a think in their 5 minutes, because I'm going to chuck some ideas out of the questions that you want to ask when you go to the Q&A. Is that okay? Brilliant. So who are we going to start with? We're going to start with Tim. Is that okay? Yep. That means I'm going to have to disappear to try and do your slides because my technology will not work this morning. Tim is a self-confessed nerd and technology junkie. He works in software sales, selling solutions that use artificial intelligence to automate large parts of the sales admin role. He's here to bring the message that the robots are coming, and that might not be such a bad thing. So if you put your hands together, please, for Tim Jackson.
Like Neville said, my name's Tim Jackson. I've worked in sales now for 25 years. Scared myself when I worked it back. And I'm probably old enough to remember some of the things that'll be on the screen now. Remember them? Can you remember them driving with them on the steering wheel whilst you're doing 3 other things, trying to find an address, that kind of thing? Yeah. Remember these? Can you remember salespeople having stacks of 10p's just so they could phone their boss through with the results, get information from the office, take messages, that kind of thing? Do you remember these? Anybody know what that is? Rolodex, Rolodex, yeah. Keeping information on paper, on business cards, and quite often if a salesperson left the company, the most prized and valued asset that the sales manager would grab before they left the building would be their Rolodex. Remember these? Does anybody know what that is? Exactly. It wasn't death by PowerPoint then. It was death by slide, death by overhead projector. But these were the tools that we used, sometimes carried around in our cars. What about these? Filofaxes. Some people still use them. It's not for me. So that was the past of sales. There's also the yellow pages, of course. Anybody get the advice from their sales manager? Start at A. Or the really, really, really good sales managers, start at G, because nobody starts at G. That was the past for sales. But do you remember this? Blockbuster. When was the last time you rented a DVD? When was the last time you rented a VHS cassette? Blockbuster was a huge success with year after year after year of profits. And then came something completely unexpected. Now, you could say it was Netflix. I don't think it was Netflix. It was something beyond Netflix. It was the technology behind Netflix. It was the internet, that huge copy and distribution machine. And nobody saw it coming. Blockbusters didn't see it coming. But there was now what's defined as the blockbuster moment within sales. And I work in sales automation. And what we do is we automate large parts of sales admin functions. So we go into companies, car dealerships in particular, and say about 80% of what you're doing right now we could do with a computer. So that's 80% of a sales admin function no longer required. Now, the mathematicians, the accountants say, well, that's 80% of headcount I don't need in that team. We prefer to say that it's 80% of headcount that could probably focus on higher value tasks. But the fact is those people with jobs, and maybe have been doing those jobs for a number of years, potentially will no longer be required. So it's a scary thing, and the robots are coming. But the robots aren't what you might look like, aren't what you might expect to look like. They're not the Terminators of the world come to destroy the earth. They're things like the internet and software on the internet. Next slide, Neville, please. Self-driving cars. This is the first ever self-driving car I saw. I mean, he was hilarious, right? He was hilarious. It wasn't technically a self-driving car, but salespeople, in my opinion, the majority of the time are professional drivers. I drove 2 hours to get here today. Yesterday I was in Norfolk. It's a 4-hour drive. I work all over the country. And probably 80 to 90% of my working life is in a car. Now, if those cars can suddenly drive themselves, what's going to be the expectation for me as a salesperson or your sales force? Are they going to give me more time off? Is this going to be leisure time? Or is this going to be work that's expected to be done, updating CRM, that kind of thing? And I don't know if you saw on the news recently, there was a guy that got in trouble by the police for doing paperwork whilst he was on the motorway. But with self-driving cars, it removes the problem. Next slide, please. Now, this was supposed to be an animated GIF, and it's supposed to have sound, but I think technology failed me on my side. I can't say this is Neville's issue here. Has anybody ever heard of Google Duplex? Anybody not heard of Google Duplex? Okay. Right. This is the form that the robots may be coming. Google Duplex is a way for a computer to make a potential phone call at the moment in customer service to customers or to businesses, and then the person on the other end, quite rightly, can't distinguish the difference between the fact that it's a computer and the fact that it's a human being. They think they're being spoken to by a real human being. Now, Google are talking about using this in their assistant technology to book haircuts and book restaurants and that kind of thing. But we could see a time when call centres just completely get replaced by something like a Google Duplex, with access to information about products, without access to personal information. Who needs the call centres anymore? It could be the call centre's blockbuster moment. Next slide, please. Spam. Spam email. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails. But what if the emails weren't spam? What if they were targeted emails? Targeted emails for understanding the person whose position they hold, understanding their personal likes, dislikes, and the computer could write a targeted and personal email that's indistinguishable from a human writing an email, and could send out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds a day. What's the need for a salesperson when the driving's done for them, when the calling's done for them, when the email's done for them? My opinion, and why I think the robots is not such a bad thing, is that the most valuable thing a salesperson can do is be face-to-face in front of the customer, discussing needs, discovering problems, delivering solutions. So this could be a good thing. It could be salespeople doing more of what most salespeople actually love to do. Next slide, please. So I've probably come with more questions than answers, and I may have gone over a little on time, so I apologise. But what do you do on a regular basis that has the potential for automation? Just think about that. It could be driving, it could be writing emails, it could be calling. All these things are likely to be automated going forward. What are the things that you do that actually make money? You're probably all creators, or you probably create something, and it's probably not the sales function that actually makes you the money. But look, 5 years down the road, I sell into automotive dealerships. We're actually having conversations in our business now to say, will car dealerships have their blockbuster moment? If self-driving cars come, and it moves to a rental model, and the manufacturers come, and they decide that they no longer need the dealerships, car dealerships, huge business that might just evaporate just like that. And what are the rules of sales that will never change? Trust, integrity, problem discovery. Think about those things. Get good at those things. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You notice the seamless bit in the background there, Ruben slides. That's the height of technology. There's a laptop for you. There was something there that really struck me, and it's probably not the bit that you expected, but thank you for that. Years and years ago, you know the OHP slide that we saw earlier on? Years and years ago, our head office used to be in Peterborough. When we had a big sales team, we used to go down there. And we had an external company coming in to do some product training, and they phoned up, and Shelley, who's a really good friend of mine actually, answered the phone, and this company saying, do you have a big enough training room, and do you have, and the final question was, do you have an OHP? And Shelley paused for a couple of seconds. She said, well, we've got Audrey, who's quite old, but I wouldn't call her an OHP. She never really lived that one down, I'm going to be honest. Hey. Every time I hear that, I can't but help think of Shelley. Our next panellist is Richard Tubb, and Richard's one of the best-known experts within the global IT managed service provider, the MSP community. He launched and sold his own MSP business before creating a leading MSP media and consultancy practice. Richard helps IT businesses owners take back control by freeing up their time and building a business that can run without them. He's the author of the book, The IT Business Owner's Survival Guide, and writer of the award-winning blog, which is tubblog.co.uk. So I can have a warm welcome, please, to Richard Tubb.
Hey folks, I'm Richard. I'm a newcomer to the Northeast. I moved up here from Birmingham a couple of years ago. So first of all, thank you for making me feel welcome here. I took the first trip on the ferry this morning, and I was like a little kid. I was like, oh, this is so exciting. My background, I ran an IT business in Birmingham for many, many years. I sold it about 7 years ago now. And what I do on a day-to-day basis now is to help the owners of other IT businesses avoid the many, many, many mistakes that I made when I ran my own business. So when Neville asked me if I would speak a little bit about how technology is changing sales, I actually, as a geek, surprisingly, and I'm a massive geek, make no mistake about that, I thought about how technology isn't changing sales. So there's an old adage, I wonder if you'd agree with me on this, and Tim, you were talking about what's not changing, what's always been true in sales. I think the adage that people do business with people they know, like and trust has always been true, and I'm going to argue it's always going to be true as well. I think that technology makes it easier for us to build deeper connections with people, but the vast majority of us are not using technology in that way. We are using it to try and make more connections, superficial connections. And it's actually remarkably easy in the online world nowadays to stand out from the crowd by using technology. Let me give you an example. So I've written a blog about the IT industry for the last 15 plus years. It's built up quite an audience around the world. The thing is, I don't actually know who reads that blog. No, hardly anybody ever puts their hands up and says, I read the blog. I was presenting at a conference in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, and before you think, oh, isn't that glamorous, most of the presentations I deliver are in like Warrington and Birmingham and places like that, so that was the aberration. But I'd finished the presentation and was heading back to my hotel room, and this massive American fellow came up to me, and he was like 6'4" wide and 6'4" tall as well. Walked up to me and he said, "Hi, Richard," and shook my hand vigorously. And then he leaned in and gave me a big bear hug. Now, I'm a hugger. I love a hug. If anybody wants a hug later on, feel free to give me a shout. But even I was taken aback when this massive American chap came up to me. Now, I've got the memory span of a goldfish. So I actually said to him, like, once I'd extricated myself from his vice-like grip, I was like, "Oh, forgive me, where do we know one another from?" And he was like, "Oh, no, we've never met before, but I've read your blog for years." And I think that's a great example of how my blog content has helped to accelerate that know, like, and trust. And that massive American has gone on to become a client now. So I think most of us are missing the opportunities to do these type of things. Let me give you some practical examples, perhaps in that will be applicable in your world. How many of you have connected with somebody on LinkedIn this week? Quick show of hands. Keep your hands up if that connection that came through said, "Hi, such and such, let's connect on LinkedIn," and nothing else. Oh my, what? Why should, I get dozens of these every month. Just connections coming through. Let's connect on LinkedIn. I call it the boilerplate connection. It's lazy. It's absolutely lazy. It's the equivalent of walking up to somebody at a business networking event with your business card, popping it in their top pocket or pocketing it in the jacket pocket, giving a little smile, and then turning away and walking away without saying anything. I don't know about you, that isn't business networking, that's creepy. Yeah? It takes 30 seconds to customize that invite and to say, "Hey Richard, we met at such and such event," give them a little memory hook or something, or even if you've not met, I would like for us to connect on LinkedIn because of whatever valuable reason to you. Takes 30 seconds to do that. Yet the vast, vast, vast majority of people don't do that. It's remarkably easy to be remarkable online using technology, so do that. I'll give another example. Quick show of hands for those people who have connected with somebody on LinkedIn this week. That was virtually everybody in the room. Hands up. And this is one for you. When you actually connected with that person, did you actually go into their profile then and have a look around? Yeah? The vast majority of people don't do this. So I'd say to you, go a step further. Is there people that you share, shared relationships between you? Have you read some of the articles that they've put out there? Have you commented on the articles? Have you shared those articles? This all takes about 5 minutes to do, but it's a great way to start a relationship off strong. Make sense? The vast majority of people just don't do this. What they're looking to do is to build as many friends online as quickly as possible. And surely the technology allows you to do that, but to what end? We saw the Yellow Pages earlier on. That was the LinkedIn of its day. If I had a Yellow Pages, I was friends with 100,000 people in Birmingham, and I knew them just as well as most people know their connections on LinkedIn. as in, I know their name. How many people have got an email from somebody on LinkedIn and then you've gone, who is this person? We've been connected for 4 years. Where do I know them from? Take 5 minutes to just jump in and have a look around there. Another example that I can think of, a practical example. Who in the room here has given a LinkedIn testimonial over the past month? Good. So I sometimes ask that question and people are like, what's a LinkedIn testimonial? Now, I'm not talking about the recommendations, where you click on the button, this person's good with the cloud, this person's good at selling. Who cares about that? Nobody actually cares about all those, things that come up. But if you took 5 minutes once a month, and I set myself a reminder to do this because there's always somebody in my life that I'm grateful for something that they've done for me. Take 5 minutes to write a LinkedIn testimonial and say, Richard helped out with this and he was fantastic at this and so on and so forth. It means the world to the person who receives that recommendation because, again, hardly anybody is doing this. And I'll tell you a byproduct of leaving those testimonials as well. It's human nature to want to reciprocate. And so I checked this morning and I've got over 60 plus recommendations for me on LinkedIn. Now, I didn't leave the recommendations expecting people to give me a recommendation back, but the vast majority of people tried to do that. Now, that's a really good indicator of social proof, isn't it, for anybody who wants to work with me? My God, look at all these people who have left recommendations for Richard on LinkedIn. So I guess when it comes to technology and sales, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Technology can be used to reach out to more people, but we call that spam, and we call that cold calling, telemarketing and things like that. The reality for me is that if we slow down and use the technology to make deeper connections with people and to start off on the right foot, that's remarkable. And the best thing about it, hardly anybody is doing it. So if you just take those small steps, you can be in the top 5% that's doing it. You can be remarkable. You can stand out from the crowd. So I guess that's not talking about how technology is changing selling, but that's my little soapbox rant. LinkedIn connections, don't send the boilerplate ones. Do have a look at the people you connected with on LinkedIn and just be a nice person. Leave some testimonials out there. It's really remarkable.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Richard. Everybody knows I'm a big LinkedIn fan, and if you are on there this afternoon having a bit of a browse about, as I'm sure many of you will be, there's a specific profile you might want to look up. It's a guy by the name of Art Flater. It's an unusual name, Chicago-based guy. He sells 3D printing technology, and he has a very famous profile on LinkedIn. Stop by his profile, have a look. He has all sorts of weird quotes in there, like he invented the original salesperson's 2.5-hour lunch. Generally sits about and takes credit for other people. He has an anti-LinkedIn profile. So you want to laugh with you and your team, have a look around, have a look at his profile. It's a great one to have a look at. So thank you for that. The LinkedIn piece is obviously really, really important. Our third panelist today is Ian Farrer. Ian is a sales and marketing professional and has over 20 years in international business development in various roles. He's got a strong global network of influential contacts he can call on, and Ian has held management and operational leadership positions for engineering and technology companies. Ian's also had the impressive experience holding non-executive directorships and is the host of the top-ranking business podcast, Industry Angel. Could you put your hands together, please, for Ian Farrer?
Thanks, Nev. That was interesting. So I made a few notes as we're going there. You might have seen us scribbling away. Thinking about the blockbuster bit, there's lots of products and services and businesses in that entrepreneurial graveyard. And I guess great products are good for customer retention. But in terms of customer acquisition, we've got to be great marketers. We've got to be great educators. And as salespeople, we need to get across that know, like, and trust factor that Richard mentioned, and also Tim mentioned about the trust side. So how do we do that? How do we get that trust factor across? Well, for me, it's killer content, creating some really good content, because is it 90% of the data we've got in the world was built the last 2 years, was generated in the last 2 years. That's crazy. So there's lots of noise. From a social media point of view, we are spraying with a fire hose that noise. There's lots of content out there. So how do we become different? So for me, we are often fishing in the same pond, and it's full of sharks. essentially we're all here today trying to target the same customers in the same networks, in the same industry verticals, saying the same things over and over again. And how do we differentiate ourselves from there? It comes down to price, and then it's just a race to the bottom. So for me, how do we differentiate ourselves is to create killer content. So we often hear about innovation in business. We're innovating our products, our services, our processes, but do we innovate with sales and marketing? So sales and marketing doesn't have to be expensive. It's only expensive if it's done wrong. So for me, there's a lot of social media content there that I think we should be trying to capitalize on in a technology point of view. So across the morning, that'll be my slant on this. I always start off a talk with building relationships, sharing content is really important. And if you do that, actually sales will just take care of itself just by creating relationships. So that's where I'm going to come from today. No slides, Nev.
Oh, brilliant.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. It's really interesting when you talk about killer content there, and you're right in terms of it being a big pool of information out there in the marketplace. I think we see that a lot. With that in mind, obviously, we've posted some stuff on LinkedIn today. There'll be some stuff going out on Twitter. Please get involved on the social side as well. Use the hashtag ISM Regional. I'm looking at Rachel. ISM Regional, yes, thanks. I'm pleased to know that one off the top of my head. Our fourth panellist is Kate Boscherell. And Kate is a digital strategist specialising in emerging tech, particularly blockchain and distributed ledger technology. She's the COO of City Web Consultants, working on the application of blockchain. There's loads of technical words here, just bear with me. AR, VR and machine learning for blue chip clients in the UK and overseas. Kate's first job was with an IBM business partner in Denver, back when the AS400 was a really cool piece of hardware and the World Wide Web didn't exist. She has held senior technical and financial roles in businesses across multiple sectors and is a published author of non-fiction and sci-fi. Hands together, please, for Kate.
Thank you, Neville. Oh my goodness. So I'm coming at this from a slightly left field because I'm not a salesperson. No, I'm an accountant. And I'm a tech person. And then when you start thinking about it, actually for the last 10 years, I have been selling my backside off with the small businesses that I have been bringing up through startup and growth phases, and now with City Web, which is a larger consultancy. So I have been selling. I had 3 years knocking on doors as well at some point in my career. But I come from the angle of business processes and from a love of technology. I think Neville and I had a chat a couple of weeks ago, and one of the words that came up in our discussion was immediacy. And rather than looking at how sales has changed and how it's going to continue to change, look at how all of your lives have changed. I mean, the phone box was not just used by salespeople. They were just the ones at the front of the queue that you were annoyed with. The yellow pages were not just used by salespeople. That was where you found your plumbers. We are used to now sending a messenger message across to cousins in Canada, where before you bought a little blue airmail letter so that it was nice and light and it had prepaid postage, but you couldn't send a photograph that you'd had printed because it probably hadn't come back after the 2 weeks in the processing shop. So we had a slower pace of life in everything that we did. In accounting, we had a slower pace of life. In tech, we certainly had a slower pace of life, coming from working on sort of mid-range computers and with IBM business partners, and then back to discover that there was one PC in the office and you weren't allowed to touch it unless you'd been on an MS-DOS course, was a bit of a shock. So fast forward now to my life as someone who is selling the capabilities of a business. I go to a conference, I collect a bunch of business cards. I put those business cards down on a nice contrasting background, I photograph them with my smartphone. That imports them directly into a little mini system which will extract all of the details of that person. And I'm sorry, send them an automated LinkedIn invitation. Really sorry about that. And I can go back and I can check, have I contacted that person? What's my next steps with them? I don't need the Rolodex. I get rid of the business cards. They go in the bin the next day. I get back and I used to just start writing notes or doing things on Excel. And then when you're in a situation where you have a second person needing all of your knowledge, the obvious thing is to start putting together a CRM. I use a free CRM system at the moment because we've only got a couple of users on there. And I can connect the connections that I've made, the opportunities. I can take them through the pipeline. I can write notes. I can attach files. And my colleagues can see it. I got a note yesterday on Slack from one of my colleagues saying, I've just managed to close this. We finally managed to get this proposal accepted. It's all closed. And look, we've got a full green line on the pipeline. Brilliant. So we're using technology for that immediacy of, rather than every week we have a meeting to see how things are going, I knew straight away, because I'd got a screen print on Slack to remind me to go and look at the CRM, that this thing had happened. So emerging technology and emerged technology is bringing an immediacy and a speed to the kind of things that we're doing. And that's a good thing, because that's what the customers expect as well. They expect to be able to go onto your website and to be able to talk to somebody if they have a problem at stupid o'clock. Is it going to be you, or is it going to be your chatbot? I'd be quite happy if the chatbot answered the basic questions for me. If I have a client abroad and I need to look at cross-border payments, how lovely that the financial services sector is getting a long way towards implementing blockchain-based cross-border payments that will take a fraction of the administration and a fraction of the time. Isn't it great that I can look at a sofa through my picture on my iPhone and see how it's going to look against the wall of my house before I buy it? So our actual activities have not changed, they've just speeded up. And you have an opportunity in any business process to adopt that speed and to ensure that you are giving your clients the responses and the service that they have come to expect from everything in their lives. That's my starter for 10.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you. Kate is absolutely right. We did have a conversation today about immediacy. And I think I mentioned this to Ian yesterday when I phoned, because were you in Lancaster yesterday, Ian? Was that right? Yes? Yeah, he was in Ian. I was at sorry, this is a bit tenuous, but bear with me. I was at a university reunion on the weekend, which is why I still look a bit bleary-eyed. And there was one guy who couldn't make it, and we kept missing him all weekend. He's based in Norway. He just couldn't make it, and we tried to Skype him, and we couldn't. And he said, let's do FaceTime. And I had 3 people in the car driving back from North Wales. We're driving past Lancaster up the M6 in the middle of nowhere, running a FaceTime call where all 3 of us in the car could see him, he could see all of us. And we had, I think, a 25 or a 30-minute video call in the car. It's like, that's like, I'm living the future now. I want a Jetsons car next. That's me. I'm there. So immediacy and where it goes. So what I'd like to do now, please, is open up to your thoughts, your questions and your input. This is the interactive bit. I've prepared a sheet full of questions, but if I'm honest, they're all a bit pants. Because, hey, I'm expecting you to have much better questions based on what you've heard. And I've seen what's really nice is lots of folks with their heads down, scribbling notes and thoughts on this. I believe we've got a microphone. It's not because we don't think we're going to be able to hear you. It's just we're trying to record all this, hence the microphones today. So if you could hang on until somebody passes you a microphone, shout it out, and I'll just, if you want to ask an individual panel member, or my preference is just to whiz it up and down the panel. So who'd like to kick us off with the first question to get us going? Oh, we've got 2 in the front straight away. There you go. If we can sit side by side and organise that, that's brilliant, thanks. Do you want to just do who you are and then just your quick question, please?
Certainly. Hi everybody, my name is Chloe and I run a marketing consultancy called Bumble and Bloom Media. Thank you, that was really interesting. 15 questions, but I'll keep the first one to one. when you talk about tech and emerging tech, can anyone shed any insight to spotting the opportunities? Because I don't know about anybody else, but I read a lot and I'm really interested. But sometimes it could be like, where do I go first? Where do I go first? Do you have any tips on kind of discipline in yourself, of kind of where to start, or because it can be really overwhelming. You want to do all of the things, don't you? Especially when you talk about automation, and whether that is automating your email campaigns or chatbots or whatever. Like, do you have any tips on sort of where to start and how to discipline yourself?
Okay, thank you for that. That's a brilliant question. So we've already got a hand up to respond to that. So we're looking at how we kind of prioritise, how we make the most of tech, which one to adopt and which one to potentially pass by. So Kate, you want to go for that first?
Yep, I'll jump in first because I've got hold of the microphone. It goes right back to business processes. So it's all very well going, wow, I want to implement all of this, but look for the pain points in the business and then look for something that can solve it. Be aware of the technology that is coming through, because if you don't know it's there, you can't apply it. But don't look at it and go, how can I implement this? Look, how can it solve a pain point? If it can't, put it aside until it can.
Okay, brilliant. Who else wants to pick that up?
Yeah, actually, I picked up some information from the other panelists that I think's important here. Is sales hasn't really fundamentally changed. We're just doing the things that we did faster. So look for the things that enable you to do the right things faster, and also with Richard said about depth as well. Look for the things that can make things much more rich in terms of experience. Try not to be distracted by the shiny baubles of technology. I'm the worst person for it, but it doesn't end well.
Thanks, Tim.
Do you work on your own, or are you part of a team?
I have a team of freelancers and associates who I work with.
Similar to me. So, yeah, I work on my own, and I've got a team of virtual assistants around the country that I work with. So the first tip I would give is, as well as being aware of the technology, it's not necessarily you that has to use it. So, social media, there's a lady on my team, Gudrun and Laura, who lives not far from here. She does content repurposing for me. So there's all these different things that we can be doing, and it's easy to go, right, I've got to do them all right now. And perhaps you can do them all right now, probably not, but you could have a good go at it by outsourcing and delegating to other people. So for those of you who are like me, perhaps work on your own, I would invest in having a look at virtual assistants who can help you with these type of things. The other thing I would say, for the tech that you're actually using yourself, because there's some things that you can't outsource, you've got to do yourself, batch those activities. So, for instance, for goodness sake, don't spend all of your day living in LinkedIn or on Twitter or in your email inbox responding to things. That's not a good use of your time. Batch the activities, do it that way. And I think the third and final thing, and this is just about productivity when you're working for yourself, don't turn your phone on first thing in the morning, and don't do email first thing in the morning. Work on one of the big rocks within your business, something that you need to get done that day. Because short of the house being on fire, there's nothing that should really distract you from that, and certainly not what drops in your inbox, which is essentially other people's to-do list for you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard. Ian.
Do we think Richard does that? He does.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I guess picking up on that point then in terms of discipline, I like to gamify things. So if you have a social media strategy, have a timetable, have some goals, have some KPIs, why we're doing something. For instance, I like to put 10 meaningful comments per day on LinkedIn. And I'm not talking about, well done, mate, nice one. I'm talking meaningful comments. So if someone's wrote a blog article, why does that resonate with you? What are you going to do after you've read that article? Have you done something similar? So creating some really good, meaningful comment, but gamifying it. So maybe 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, 3 at the evening. So the notification things absolutely destroys me, because honestly, I look at some people's iPhones, and there's so many notifications all over there. I couldn't handle it. I need to know. So I wish I had Richard's cool, but I just don't. So yeah, gamifying things, having some discipline around that. And the Pomodoro method for productivity works quite well. Have a Google of that.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you. I'll share one because happened to be with the business yesterday, and we were doing some observations, and they were talking about, well, we're implementing some new software to manage our processes. So what are your current processes? And I walked into the office, and they had one of the biggest desks I've ever seen, covered in bits of A4. These ones are dead, these ones are live and we're chasing, these ones have been signed off, and these are in processing. Wow. But what was really nice, and this is the bit about technology for me, that process worked, and it's worked for the last 5 years. I said, please, 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 I'm not a technology expert in terms of process, but please, whatever you bring in to do this, make sure it supports your process. Do not try and amend your process to fit the technology. For my unfortunate sins, I ran a CRM team 15 years ago, and back then the biggest resistance we had to technology and productivity and new solutions were salespeople hated the technology. And it's great when you fast forward 15 years and you see this massive change where salespeople really don't like the technology and really won't use it and really will put resistance, and that's the space we're in. So just be careful about that and have a look at processes being supported rather than kind of making the process fit. But brilliant question to get us kicked off. So where we're going next? We're just moving on the line. Oh, there you go. You got the microphone already. Brilliant.
Hello, everybody. My name is Duncan Yellowlees. I'm a specialist in presentation skills training and person-to-person communications. And my question really is kind of comes off the back of one of my favourite quotes or points about PowerPoint. PowerPoint was created to make the lives of presenters easier. It was made it easier to put whatever you want on screen in front of your audience. That was its reason. It wasn't created to make presentations better for the audience. And I think we've probably all seen presentations that haven't been good for the audience, but might have been a breeze to put together. So I think my question is there a risk with this increasing use of technology in business, in the world in general, that we get so caught up in the stuff that helps us do what we do faster, more efficiently, with less stress, that we lose the focus on what actually works for the people we want it to work for? And how would you handle that?
Brilliant question, Duncan. So effectively we're saying, how do we make sure technology doesn't lose the human impact piece?
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. So Ian has the microphone, so that's, yes. He does, he has the microphone, I can see. Whether he's shaking his head or not, he definitely has the microphone.
I knew you'd do this. I guess we all put our jeans on one leg at a time, okay? So it's just about being human. I know it's about cliche, about being authentic, but that's what we've got to try and do. And stop with the buzzword bingo, stop with those huge presentations, and just be real. That's all I would say. Just create relationships. It's as simple as that for me. It's done me no harm in 20 years, and why not?
Like it. Okay, thank you.
Does anybody remember a tool called Prezi? Oh. It's still around. People still use that. If you don't, go and look that up, and if you get travel sick from looking at it. Anyway, that's just for the PowerPoint thing. I think in terms of the technology, I think it's a great question. We can use technology for the sake of making life easier for ourselves, but it actually makes life more difficult for other people. And I see this in all industries. I think I'm just about to fly off to Boston, Massachusetts with British Airways on Saturday. The airline industry, it's absolutely prevalent there. And what customers do, they find workarounds. So I'll give you an example. When you book a flight, it comes up and it says, do you have any dietary requirements? And they expect you to say no. But have you ever been on a plane? Whose food comes out first? It's the people who are vegan, gluten intolerant, pescatarian. That's you only eat fish that eat fish. I made that one up. All of these things, it's crazy. And you're sitting there on the plane, you're like, they've got their meal before me, and it's freshly prepared. So what do actually most of us do when we go to book airline flights now? We go, yes, I am gluten intolerant and anything, and it's a workaround. And so we're getting the meals. Now, the airlines are noticing this but doing very little about it. Wouldn't it be better if when you booked your flight that they gave you the option and said, what type of meal would you like? Do you want this meal, that meal, or the other meal? Instead of this charade of forcing you down the one avenue because it's easier for them to cater to. So the vast majority of people who are flying more often now have suddenly come up with intolerances and things like that because they want the fresh food brought out to them there and then. And this happens within your industry, this happens within everybody's industry. Have a look at your own business and have a look for the roadblocks or the hurdles that you're putting in the way of people and how they're finding a way around it. And there's going to be some within your business that you're not aware of at the moment. Go away and have a look for those, because that's a great example of how we're using technology to serve us, but not putting the needs of the customer first.
Duncan, if I knew there was going to be a presentation expert, I wouldn't have bothered with the slides. I didn't realise I was going to be judged on the presentation I put together this morning at 4. Just picking up on something that I suppose it's a theme throughout, actually. Neville mentioned about processes. I mentioned, and I think both Richard and Ian have mentioned today, that the rules of the game haven't changed for sales. We're just using technology, as Kate was saying. We're just using the technology to do things faster or in a more rich way. And it's the same with presentations. You know, the rules of presentation and the rules of rhetoric invented by the Greeks, we're just using technology to enhance those basic rules. In terms of the actual technology side, I work for a technology. I know somebody who works for a technology company. Do they use their CRM system? No. They don't use their CRM system because somebody in purchasing bought a CRM system, said, "Yeah, job done." I use an Excel. Somebody I know uses an Excel spreadsheet, and that's because they've designed it from the user experience. So, like presentations, like any technology questions, try to look at things from the intended user's perspective. The intended user might not be the person creating the presentation. It might be the recipient of the presentation. The intended person might not be the person purchasing the CRM system. It might be the person using the CRM system. And. I think you get the picture.
Brilliant, thank you. So, Kate, we're talking about how we almost keep the human element in the technology piece and don't get lost.
My answer is just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it. I think a really nice example is something like Zendesk, so the system for customer support. So you can conceivably activate everything in that all the way through from the first contact through to the customer service chatbot that's there at 2 a.m. for your customers is spouting the same 5 FAQs that the intern wrote. That is not a good use of technology. Just because you can have notifications popping up on your phone all the time does not mean you should. I don't have a single notification other than calendar where I've got to be next and Aurora Watch because I really like that. So yeah, just because it's there doesn't mean you should. If there is something that is going to improve your life, though, then you really do need to possibly make the effort. Please step away from the Excel spreadsheet. Don't use it just because it's there. Do use things that are going to improve your processes, your security, and your ultimate well-being.
Brilliant. So, Kate said, step away from the Excel there. I'll put a little bit of a pitch in. Somebody asked me the other day what sort of CRM system they should use, and I said, obviously not Excel. I said, had you thought about starting with pen and paper? And they kind of looked at me and went, what do you mean? So, well, if pen and paper works for your process and what you need to do, why not? And if it is Excel and you want to use technology, great. If you want a CRM, use that. My example of the human aspects of interaction was, I think some of you know, I did the launch for BlackBerry when BlackBerry first came into the UK. And everybody hated it. Everybody thought it was, honestly, genuinely thought it was a stupid idea. And the feedback was, who's going to want email on a phone? That was the general kind of reaction. And HR got a little bit concerned about, well, how are we going to get this, the team to use this? And we'd have a quiet word with HR and said, the brilliant thing is, they'll be answering their emails on a weekend. And HR went, man, that's brilliant. We'll get loads more productivity. Then you'd go and see the sales director and say, I'm a bit worried about this. Why? Well, I'm always on. Yeah, think of it this way. You'll be able to play golf on a Friday afternoon and still answer emails. Oh, that's brilliant. And everybody loved it. All we had to do was find the human aspects that connect the technology to their current job, and everybody was really happy. But a brilliant question. Thank you, Duncan. And all the PowerPoint stuff was my fault. I'm just going to say that right now. Nothing to do with technology. It's the user interface that goes wrong. Excellent. So where we're going next? So we've got a roving mic. We're coming across here. Jessica, please. We're trying to give Jen as much exercise as possible this morning, which is good. If we can have a question across here next, that would be lovely. So Jessica, go on.
Williams, we're a sales outsourcing company. This is a bit of a predicament that we're in at the moment. So we looked at kind of the way that we use social media and realised that actually we're okay with it, but sometimes it's not great in terms of getting the core messaging in terms of what we do as a business across. So about a year ago, we automated it and used a content calendar. We use Buffer, there are others available. And found that actually our engagement really dropped off, and we did it really to save us, quite a lot of time. So we've kind of moved away from it completely in terms of the way that we use it, because I believe in that personal interaction completely and utterly. But then again, we're kind of thinking maybe we should do a little bit of it rather than all of it or nothing. I don't know whether anyone else faces that kind of similar thing, because social media is one of those things that it's such an important platform, but it can really suck kind of, so much time without you realising it. But we do find it useful. So is there any advice you can give in terms of kind of automating things as to personalising things and how we could do that better?
Brilliant question. So it's a bit about automating, still personalising and maintaining that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in. This is just anecdotal. So I went down the road of trying to automate and playing around with Hootsuite and scheduling everything, and I was watching very carefully how other people were doing this, and realised that I think at the time there was a number of various disasters and horrendous news stories and breaking news, and you would see incredibly inappropriate postings coming hard on the heels of something quite disastrous, and realised that actually that had damaged a brand more than anything else. The only thing that I now use in any way, I don't use Hootsuite particularly. Very, very occasionally, I will use TweetDeck just to keep an eye on several accounts, but scheduling is few and far between, and it's still a personal message. The only little thing that I use is something called Round Team, which will retweet certain hashtags and keywords, and I have lists of people who are influential and sensible, and if somebody starts tweeting something that is not in line with what I'm comfortable with, I take them off my list. So I'm actually retweeting once every 6 hours or something, and then everything else in between is personal. So I'm keeping the engagement, and I'm making sure the people that are important, some people that are important to me, can see that I am interacting with them even when I'm asleep. But it helps. It has built my level of engagement, it has built my ultimate reach, and it has maintained my relationships with people in different time zones. So that's purely my anecdotal experience.
Thanks, Kate. Anybody else for that?
I think quality trumps quantity. People can spot a bot a mile off currently. It won't always be the case, I don't think. People are getting better. Think about why you're even doing social media. Think about why you're on Twitter. It's to engage with people, and engagement's a two-way process. I feel as though we're having a conversation now. We've got eye contact. I'm talking to you. There's the rest of the audience. But it's a two-way process. And if you're going to engage with people, then engage with them. If you're just going to shout and schedule these shouts on a regular basis, you're just contributing to the noise.
Thanks.
So I love automation, and as a geek, I use all these tools as well. So Buffer, huge fan of Buffer. It was born in Birmingham. I'm very proud of it. There you go. So I think I'd go back to what I said to Chloe earlier about batching the activities. So by all means, don't transmit all the time, or certainly don't transmit all your own stuff. But there is a place for using Buffer. Buffer can actually be used as well to build up sources of other information within your industry space. So why not follow industry magazines and news sites and even competitors and things like that? And you can share their stuff out there as well. So it's not all coming from you. It's all about me. So you can use Buffer for those type of things. There's another tool that I use, absolutely love. It's called Missing Letter. And what Missing Letter does is grab hold of your latest content and uses AI, machine learning, to go through and to scan out and to pull out some really cool sound bites and things. And then it drip feeds that over the next 12 months to social media. So the thing about Twitter is it's like the Matrix, isn't it? Stuff goes and it goes all flying off the screen. So you do need to be sharing your stuff more than once out there, but you don't want to be making it all about you, as I've said earlier. Missing Letter will pull those bits out and allow you to approve them, and then it will drip feed them out over the next 12 months. So that's another great way to put it out there. The other thing I would say is batching your activities, jumping in there, responding to people, and not just looking to respond to people, but looking to join in conversations elsewhere. So you can use hashtags to find those things. I typically have a Twitter list built up of people I think are interesting, jump in and join those conversations there. So it's a mixture. Automation, there's definitely a place for it. And I would argue with something earlier on that was said where everybody can spot a bot. Not so much. And where's Russell in the room here? Would you agree with that, Russell, that everybody can spot a bot, or not so much?
I wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah. Russell runs a company called Chat Heroes that does human chat as well as the bots, but he specialises in making sure that the bot does all the like the core stuff, and then the human steps in for all the other bits. So as always, there's a mixture, isn't there, between the automation and the human element, but batch the human element so you're not just there all day, every day, jumping on stuff.
Great tips, thanks. And Ian, what would you add?
I guess it comes down to content and what the engagement's like. Analytics and insights will give you that. So what resonates with the audience, then you'll know. So before we start scheduling, we need to know what resonates, whether that be a blog, a video, a historical quotes, GIFs. Test all across the weeks, see what really resonates with the audience, and then you can schedule from them. Your audience will be different to my audience, so you have a different time of day, a different day of the week. So what I see is people are trying to schedule stuff without really trying to impact on the correct day and time to get engagement. So it all comes down to content for me.
Brilliant. And I'm going to extend that out if I can, please. Can you pass the microphone? Don, are you okay just to share a story? Is that a yes or a no? I'm not happy if you don't, but I'll. So I did a LinkedIn session recently with Nepic. And we talked a little bit about LinkedIn and some of the tools. And Dawn kind of came swaggering in, because Dawn is LinkedIn famous. Dawn posted something on LinkedIn, which you originally saw on Facebook, and I'll explain what it is in a sec, and shared out on LinkedIn. Now, remind me, how many likes and shares did you get roughly?
47,500 views, 56 shares, 60 million.
So near enough 50,000 views. How many shares, sorry? 50? And actually, when I looked at the content, and I hope you don't mind this, look at the content, it's not what I would call real high-line, high-value business content, but it connected and resonated with people. Did you see it when it went out? Or no, it's fine. The content was around when GCSE results came out, and some of you might have seen this post on Facebook. Originally, Dawn took it from and contacted this guy on LinkedIn, and actually it said it was the fire chief of Northumberland. Tyneside, sorry, yes. Holding it was saying, I didn't get very good results at O-level, didn't get my A-levels, but look at me, I'm now in this kind of senior position. Simple photograph, that was it. And it created a huge amount of engagement. So Ian and the rest of the panel have said this really clearly. It's thinking about what your audience want to engage with and making sure that piece goes out and you have that level of engagement and follow-up and conversation. And as I said, Dawn's phone blew up.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I found him. I thought, right, he really is this fireman, he really is based in Tyne and Wear. That's when I took the decision to share it on LinkedIn, because I hadn't seen it on LinkedIn, and I do watch all of the social medias. And I thought, and then I was like you, I was all night, my phone was, what, another one?
The human interaction piece, yes. Brilliant. Thank you for that. Great question, Jessica. Thank you. So where we're going next? Oh, we've got another one. Okay. So sorry.
Hi, my name's Julie Skevington, and I run Sincero. My question is, how do you differentiate between personal and business when it comes to social media? So I'm a recruitment, so social media, not social media, but anything online, my husband hates because he spends most of his days sorting it out. But and I've got 2 teenage children, so obviously they're into that. But I came onto Facebook a couple of years ago, and I struggle a little bit now of who I accept and who I don't on a personal note when I do. I love LinkedIn and use that as a business, but it's the overlap. How do you manage that?
Okay, so the overlap between personal and business on social media.
So for me, it's being human, which I've mentioned before, and I think video is really good for that. We're quite voyeuristic as people. We like to know what happens behind the scenes, a day in the life of what happens to Julie. That stuff really works, and video is good for that.
Would you accept everybody on your Facebook? Or would you keep that totally separate?
We're friends on Facebook, Jules. We're good friends. No, I get it. No, I do accept some people, but then I put them on a limited profile, so they can't see all the pictures of my kids. So yeah, there is a crossover a little bit. But going back to the video thing, I think video is really good for getting that human element out and getting the personal side of it. I love personal bits, sharing, The good thing about video now is it's accessible to everybody. The bad thing about video now is it's accessible to everybody. So basically, just be mindful of what you do on video, because the 6 minutes of you sitting in the car with white earphones in, talking absolute gobbledygook, just wastes my time. So yeah, keep it really condensed, like a minute, but you can really create some great stuff and share the human side of you.
Excellent, thank you.
So I think in direct answer to your question about would you add people on Facebook, for me the rule on Facebook is, have we met? Would I go to the pub for a drink with you? Voluntarily. If the answer to those 2 is yes, then you're a friend. So for me, the line between business and personal is absolutely blurred. I love what I do. There's people in the room here I've met through business that I now consider friends, and that we're connected on Facebook. I do keep people at sort of an arm's length. Going back to what I said earlier about LinkedIn, people friend collecting. So I get a lot of friend requests from people who know me, but I don't know them, and that's weird. So I wouldn't expect somebody to come and knock at my front door having never met them, and they say, I know all about you, can I just come in and have a cup of tea in your kitchen? No, you weirdo, go away. And that's, for me, that's exactly the same with Facebook. There's a broader piece though about people definitely are interested in having a peek behind the curtain. What I said earlier, people do business with people they know, like and trust. That is absolutely true. So for instance, my Instagram is nothing to do with work whatsoever. I occasionally mention, I might be here or whatever, but I do share what I'm eating on there. I do share what I'm drinking, who I'm out with, what I'm doing. And actually that does lend itself to business, because people are like, oh, so-and-so, and I saw you were at an event with Ian the other day, and those type of things. So there are ways people are sharing that sort of stuff out there. The downside to that, as I found the other day, I had somebody get in touch with me and they say, oh, you're Richard Chubb, you're the guy who eats all the curry. Nothing like, oh yeah, and I do a little bit of work globally, like in the IT industry as well, but they didn't know about that. They just knew about all the curry pictures that I posted. But people want to see behind the scenes. I'd encourage you to share bits of that.
Thank you.
Sorry, is it Julie? Julie, what's your business? What do you do? Sorry.
I do finance, so commercial broker.
So it's business to business. My thoughts on it. If you were in business consumer, perhaps Facebook is a good medium. But the way that I like to separate it is my LinkedIn profile is my professional profile, if you like. Facebook is my personal, friends and family kind of thing. In fact, I've actually not on Facebook anymore. It's not because I've got no friends. It's just, well, it might be. But this idea of your authentic, your voice, just because it's something's your professional profile on LinkedIn, it doesn't mean to say you can't use your voice and be authentic when either blogging or video, that kind of thing. I think that one of the things that we've talked about today is how to stand out, and when you do stand out, it's not sort of retweeting content that's just a quick share. It's about putting your thoughts and opinions and considered opinions behind that, and it gives you a little bit of an insight, helps you to know, like, and trust.
Excellent stuff, thank you. And Kate?
Okay, I'm in the same position because I also have children. One who will be on Facebook in March, 25th of March, and she can't wait. But yeah, she's more Insta and Snapchat at the moment. So I have been on Facebook since pretty much its inception. Ditto LinkedIn, Twitter was a little bit later, and I'm very, very clear about what my boundaries are. So my personal Facebook account has friends and family on it. I have a few business connections on there that I am close to. People that I know well, some that I've known for 20 years. That's fine. They're friends. I get regular friend requests from people that I know in business, and I politely decline all of them, with very, very limited exceptions. I will quite happily talk on Messenger, and I will quite happily talk in any appropriate Facebook group. I communicate with my market through, I have a Facebook page for my consultancy business, which I bung stuff on there, but it's not really a communication channel. It's more of just a poster. But Facebook groups are very important to me. Because I use those with various different professional groups. So, I mean, I'm just thinking, I've got Sage Business Experts, I've got the Bad Crypto Mastermind, I've got the various bits for all sorts of parts of my business life. LinkedIn is very professional because of what it is, but I wouldn't shy away from putting something that is personal on there. But I'm certainly not going to be sharing details of my family life so much. And I actually have 2 Twitter accounts. The reason being, if I'm sat tweeting about Eurovision, I don't really want it to get mixed up with my retweets about tech. Because I've got multiple countries going on. It would be as if I was busy celebrating 4th of July or something, and yeah, it just doesn't seem to work. So I have my business Twitter, which does include personal stuff, and I will put food on Instagram and pictures of cocktails and stuff on Twitter as well. But I also have the personal one where I can faff around and retweet daft pictures of cats. So does that kind of answer? I mean, that again is a personal choice, but I've found that when I've said to people, no, I don't connect on Facebook, my decision is completely respected, and it's fine.
Brilliant. A mix of answers there, and a kind of a different approaches. I'll put my two penneth worth in, Julie, if that's okay. For me, I think technology out of the realm completely, and just understand who's authentic that you meet in your network. So some folks will share some of that businessy and personal stuff when you meet them. When you have a cup of tea, you meet them today, and they'll talk about some stuff that happens personally. I know I do that with some of you in the room already. Some I don't. I have a very business relationship with, and that's fine. I have cheated completely, and I have 2 Facebook accounts, which is against Facebook's rules. Hey, I don't care. Until I get caught, that's fine. I have a business-facing Facebook piece, and I have a personal Facebook piece. And it's amazing how all my business contacts seem to find the personal one, and I just have to bounce them back. No, you don't get access to that. And I get friends, so I separate the 2 out. But I think authenticity, I was pulling my phone out there, not being rude, because I posted something on LinkedIn as we start the session today to see if we had any questions coming in, because I thought it might be nice to get some stuff. And one of the things is I'm really not good at doing a selfie. So I took a selfie and put it on, and the one comment we've had is, well, you could look a bit happier, couldn't you? No. I can't take a selfie, I'm not unhappy, it's just the way it's happening. But I think the authenticity comes through in business anyway, and then technology should mirror what you do face to face. So I know you're a lovely, warm, engaging, friendly, smiley, happy person, and that should come through on your social media, and that tends to break the barriers.
I think it's with me is sometimes I haven't accepted everybody on Facebook. I probably did in the beginning when I see the beginning. I've been on it less than 2 years. But I don't now. And as daft as it seems, we all go out. I could end up on there drunk or cheat. But it's like I don't necessarily want everybody to see that. Even though I've got nothing to hide, it's that kind of, and it's not me that's posted.
Yep, absolutely.
Tagged in.
Somebody else has tagged you. And it's that kind of...
Yeah, that's the thing that I want to avoid. Obviously, I'm whiter than white in my personal life and never go out drinking.
No. Obviously, none of us here do, which is good. So, what other questions do we have? Sorry.
Are you and Julie connected on Facebook?
Are you and I connected?
This is what I was just about to say. If I got your Facebook friend request through from your business account, what does that say about our relationship?
It's a great business relationship.
I'm checking you up right now. Are we friends? Are we business friends?
Can of worms. So, moving on. No, sorry, can I just answer that point? It's a decision, and it was either delete because I've got a lot of friends, and the tipping point for me, and this stays in the room clearly, the tipping point for me is Mrs. Tynemouth, who can't be here this morning, who's one of my co-directors and helps organise these. Normally she's ill at the minute, so I can say this because she's not here. We had an unusual wedding, can we say? So I turned up on a white horse wearing a suit of armour, and we had a full medieval wedding, which we don't generally shout about. Don't laugh. It just seemed like a really good idea at the time. And I had a load of friends and family members just share a celebration anniversary. And of course, on my business card, oh my God, is that you on a horse? Yes, is that you? And I just had this little bit of a breakdown of like, actually, I don't want folks to know that in business, even though I've just shared it now. It's out there and that's fine. You won't tell anybody. You won't see the photographs, which is brilliant. So that was the tipping point, and that was the change for me. So yes, that's why that's there. I'm getting shouted at now. I'm going to move on. Dawn, did you have a question? So we've got a question.
It's just, I've just checked that post, and it is 1,057 likes. I thought it was 50.
1,057 likes on that LinkedIn post that you had from around the fire guy. Fabulous. That's real engagement. Love that. LinkedIn famous, everybody. Make sure you speak to Dawn and connect with her. Excellent. So what other questions have we got from you guys? One here. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Hi, I'm Ailsa Latimer. We run a seafood business in Whitburn. Very different, I think, probably to what everyone else does. We have real customers who actually come into a shop.
Steady. Easy.
Cool. I've got two questions. One really quick one. What is CRM?
Good question.
Customer relationship management.
A horrible acronym that means just looking after your customers in the most effective way. So whether it's paper, Excel, spreadsheet. No, that's never going to catch on. I'm not having that. That's not going to catch on.
My question is to do with security and when it all goes wrong.
Yes.
The internet goes down, your computer crashes, and then you're in that moment. What can we do about that? How can we protect ourselves?
Okay, so how do we protect ourselves when the technology is taken away from us, when everything stops working, when everything kind of crashes? Brilliant. And please, I'm not answering that one, so I'm going to pass the panel. Where we're starting.
Back everything up before that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there is something that's going to be absolutely business critical with you having customers in that have redundancy in any business, then redundancy is a good plan. So have some sort of backup, even if it's cash box and a book underneath the counter. And in another business, it might be being able to access your files on a cloud drive and so on. So just make sure that there is some way. If that broke now, what would you do? And then put that in place just in case it breaks.
Fabulous. Thank you. Who else wants to say that one? How do you handle things when things go wrong?
Well, I don't have any technical expertise on this, but what I would say from a personal perspective is planning. Planning is great. Just think about the kinds of things that could go wrong. And try and mitigate them beforehand. Things like Dropbox, iCloud, Microsoft have got OneDrive. All things are either cheap or very, very free. Free ways of backing up information. And just be a little bit stoic about these things, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So some of my clients who are IT companies, their disaster recovery plan, if the internet stops working, is to go to Starbucks. And that absolutely works. And the reason it absolutely works for them is their phone will work down there, and they store all of their data in the cloud using Dropbox and these other technologies, so they can go and do that. I guess in your world, because the business is in one place, you could think about having 3G connections or 4G connections. So make sure that you've got the ability on your phone with your phone provider to share your phone's 4G signal with other machines, so you can connect to it to use wireless there, or you could buy a specific dongle so that if the Wi-Fi, if the broadband stops working at your property, you can still connect to the internet that way as well. So just think of it as like a fallover. But the key for me is making sure that everything is backed up to the cloud, and it's not a process that you have to undertake. It happens automatically. I'll give you a really brief example. I was due to speak at a big event in London in front of an IT audience, ironically on disaster recovery a few years ago. A few minutes before I was due to go on stage, I went to pick my laptop up and it wasn't there. It got stolen. With my presentation and everything else on. And so I wasn't short of IT people who had laptops that I could borrow, logged into the cloud, grabbed it, and literally sort of ran onto stage, dripping with sweat a little bit, and then told the story of what had happened. The nice and the funny ending to that story is, so I got through the presentation, it actually added a little bit to it. I blogged about my experience of losing my laptop and the absolute horror of thinking that all my clients' data and everything else was on there, and what steps I'd be taking going forward. Got a phone call on the Monday morning from a lady who said, "Is that Richard Tubb?" "Yes." "I think I've got your laptop here." I was like, "Okay." And she was like, "It's got exactly the same bag as mine. I picked it up, loaded it up this morning, it came up with your name." So I immediately did a search, and the very first article I found was, this is my experience, my blog post about this is my experience of losing a laptop. And so I realised that was the case. So I then wrote a follow-up blog about this is what happened, and that made great, and it's one of the top articles on my blog as well. But have everything automatically backed up to the cloud, and think about having some fall-over internet connection for you to use, and you shouldn't go far wrong.
Brilliant, and that'll tie nice with Ian and long-tail content and making your content go further. So yes, Ian.
Yeah, just really echoing what the guys have said. I guess, like anything in life, if you're nervous about something, having a contingency plan, thinking those things out and creating a list, just removes that nervousness, does for me anyway. So yeah, plan B, I like to think about backups. If you've got it twice, you've only got it once. If you've got it once, you don't actually have it at all. That's where I like to think about things. And if your internet connection goes down, our friend at the back, Jen, runs a hot desking, so you could drop into somewhere like One Trinity Green and use them. Okay.
Brilliant. I think one of the bits for me here is, and again, I love to kind of park technology first and then kind of come back to it. And a lot of businesses don't think about the fundamentals of what they're trying to do. So the point you're making, Elsa, about kind of people coming in, you say hello to them. It's a fundamental part of engaging with customers. So you just go through what are the absolute fundamental things that we need to do, and how do we do them extraordinarily well with or without technology. So my example is something similar. I did a presentation for a group on an evening, and it was about LinkedIn. I said, listen, I'm really got to apologise, in the building next door, the conference space next door, there's a lot of noise going on. And the conference organiser said, yeah, we're having new internet put in. Yeah, I'm doing a presentation on LinkedIn. Do you know what? We hadn't thought of that. You're not showing your LinkedIn at all, are you? Yes. So the backup plan was, well, here's some slides and let's talk through it. There is always a backup plan. There is always, if nothing else works, and despite the fact we've had some technology issues with the slides today, I said when the team set us up, so if the slides don't work, don't worry, everything's written down, we know what we're doing. So what are the basics you're trying to do, and how do you do them extraordinarily well, with or without technology? Yes. Jen, you want to pitch in, sorry.
John would like to have a bit of a pitch in as well. Excuse me. Have a bit of a throat problem. So I think all the advice is really sound, but I would check out that the people that you put the trust in around going to the cloud, or I've got 3G and 4G, if you can get 4G at Whitburn, sometimes you can't. As I found when I've been trying to phone people down at the beach, is find out if people are authentic.
Yeah.
And even large companies can fall foul of this. So one of my last projects, in a company called British Airways, was to look at how they could manage PCI tokens for credit cards. So when you put your credit card in, as soon as it hits the network in a highly secure environment, it hits this little technological box, becomes an indistinguishable number because it becomes encrypted, and thereafter you never know whose card it is or can get at the information. That's until you give that management to somebody you think you can trust and you can't. And as you may have seen, they're going to be hit with a massive fine because they try to save money and give that service to somebody that they thought they could trust and couldn't.
Yeah.
And whether it's social engineering, which I'm hearing from within British Airways, or somebody just failed to do something that they were paid good money to do, it's gone significantly wrong and it's going to cost a lot of money. So just make sure, like before you post on LinkedIn, was the fireman authentic before sharing the information? There's all these two backups, there's the cloud, there's 4G, but can you actually trust the people that you're putting your business in when the thing goes wrong? So it's not just, that's a good idea, I can do that. Are they going to be there when you need them? And are they authentic? And that's the bit you've got to think through.
That's a brilliant point, and one that we all should take close note of. That you need to make sure that you're dealing with folks that can do the right thing for you when things go wrong. I did a bit of work in disaster recovery quite some time ago, and it's one of those areas that until you need it, you don't understand the importance of it. I remember there's a big northeast firm that we talked about putting in some disaster recovery and some resilience into, and they didn't see the point of it. And I was actually on holiday when they phoned me and said, one of our JCBs doing some landscaping in our grounds has just dug up every single bit of cable and fibre into the building. How quick can you get here? To which I responded, I'm on holiday. We talked about this months ago and you didn't want to do it. I will cancel my holiday and we'll start talking about it. But it was that moment of until you need it, you don't know how important it is, and it needs to be taken seriously, and it's not lowest cost option in that for me. Guys, in terms of times, I know Kate has to disappear. Is there a last question that anybody might want to ask specifically to Kate? And then we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back for final thoughts. Kate, this is going to be a killer question. This is going to be the hardest one you've had so far. Ian? Come on. Thanks.
Just picking up on the point about what was a CRM, it is a really good question, and I couldn't help but notice, there's only one woman on the panel today. How accessible is technology in the future of selling, but also in not just selling, but in terms of cost, and like definitions, using acronyms, women on the I'll finish with something, you know what I mean? More women in tech.
Yes, more women in tech. Yeah, definitely required. I think there are a lot of women in tech. There are a lot of very, very capable women in tech. There are a few of us who shout louder than others, but it takes I think this is a general observation, nothing to do with tech, is that whenever there is a panel, the people who are setting up that panel, that conference, that seminar, whatever it is, they will go and look at who's spoken at other things, so it is self-perpetuating. If people are setting up conferences, seminars and so on, I can recommend in the UK, womenwhokeynote.com. Is a fantastic resource. Anyone who here with expertise needs to get on there. Anyone who's looking for expertise, just go and search by keyword and you'll pull up. I mean, there's hundreds of people on there. In the US, Innovation Women is stacking panels everywhere. I'm speaking at a conference in France next week because one of the sponsors realized that there were very few women and went, what the heck is going on, and rang everybody they knew who actually works in the space. So they, it really is has to be proactive, because once we have all of these people speaking and being asked to do things, then the people who are selecting by seeing who knows what they know will see women's names as well. That's the answer on that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kate. Anybody else want to pick that point up or add anything too?
Actually, can I add something as well in terms of technology and accessibility and running around multitasking parents, etc., etc., etc. Couldn't do it without the technology.
Thank you.
I think there are a lot of women in tech doing great things. Sometimes it's about that, who decides to get up on a platform and do that, and sometimes it's about attitudes. I remember I used to work in construction sales for a company called Hilti, and they're a very, very diverse organisation. And I started with a colleague, first time, a lady called Khadija. She had a degree in engineering, and we were going to sites together. And we were talking about plans for putting services in, things like electrics, plumbing, that kind of thing. She had a degree in engineering. She knew what she was talking about. She was talking to the account managers, the guys on the ground, and all the while I noticed these people were looking to me as a nearly 40-year-old man. So and Khadija was in her early 20s or mid 20s, quite diminutive, but they were looking to me for confirmation that what she was saying was right, and I had no idea what she was talking about. She had a degree in engineering. I'm just a salesperson. So it's about attitude sometimes. But fair play to Neville putting together this panel today. The approach I found from Neville wasn't that he'd gone to look for other people who talked. I've never spoken on a panel. It probably shows, but I've never spoken on a panel. He said, look, who's interested? Let me know what your thoughts are, and then I presume you've done some selection from there.
Firstly, it's nice to sit in front of an audience that is split, men and women. So typically I present in front of IT audiences, and I will see one or two female faces in an audience of 100, 200, and those are typically women who work in marketing or whatever. The IT industry has got a huge problem with women in tech. If you think about the type of customers that people work with, especially IT companies, they aren't all male-dominated companies. So why on earth are the people who are supporting those customers all male-dominated? There are some changes afoot within the IT industry. There's a wonderful organisation called Advancing Women in IT, does fantastic work, and you will find no end of really great speakers, technicians, engineers, women engineers and things there. Fantastic. And if I can give a plug for my own podcast, just the other week I interviewed a lady I've mentored for many years, a lady called Melissa Saar, who is just taking the IT industry by storm, doing fantastic work. And so I specifically sat down to say, what's it like to work as a woman in a male-dominated industry, which the IT industry is. And so I'd encourage you to check out that, because Melissa's doing fantastic work. It does need to change, and it's actually a little bit further than just encouraging women into IT. There's a whole massive problem with diversity, full stop. I interviewed a chap yesterday, a recruitment agent for the IT industry, and I asked the question, I said, how can we encourage more women in IT? And he was like, it's actually, how can we encourage more than just white males into IT? And there's a huge problem with it. So I like to think that I'm part of the solution, but we've got a long, long way to go.
Yeah, I think we're all part of that solution, so we can all influence our senior management teams. But I'd like to see influence being right back at the start, so going into schools. We've talked a lot about STEM at the moment in the schools, but why can we not bring that subject up? It's a really good point. Millennials now in the workforce, over 50%. So I think as a generational thing, this will change going forward. But yes, there is a lot of grey-haired old males in business. It is what it is. But as things go, it'll just come through. I'm not worried about it, to be honest. I think if we just keep talking about it, things will change.
Just while passing the mic back, I just took a couple of bits in, then we'll just see where we go. So for me, the thing I strive for this is a diverse panel. And what's really interesting is I don't search for particular ethnic or sexual or gender. What I'm looking for is a diverse panel in terms of how they think and how they approach things. Yep. And that's what I wanted today. And what we said last time at the last ISM meeting was, who wants to be on the panel? And I'm really, and honestly, and there's a great, you can see what's coming to you here, can't you, Chloe? That there is a chance to get up and do any of these sessions going forward. So Jessica and I coordinate how we run with Rachel the ISM sessions. And the more diverse folks we can get stood up here in terms of ideas, thoughts, input, whoever it is, I don't mind, There is a space and a platform and a voice, assuming you're not just going to push what you do as a business. There is a space for folks to get up and hear and do that. But the big bit for me is it's not about what somebody isn't here, it's about the way they think and the way they present information. I wanted lots of different people with ideas and approaches, and I think that's what we've got so far. Does that make sense?
We've got to be really careful in terms of positive discrimination. You know, there is that balance to be had. You know, I run pretty much a female-only business, but you know, we're now kind of changing things a little bit. But there is an issue with positive discrimination here. Is that, you know, there should be 50-50 representation, but it is about quality. It's about you know, the people that actually we're looking for, and gender, I don't think particularly.
The quality is out there, and it is important to. I don't think it's necessarily positive discrimination to say we should have 50-50, because the expertise is 50-50, and if you're going to have any sort of event that reflects the expertise in an industry, then there has to be that effort to do it. So it's almost positive discrimination would be really pushing the envelope further, but actually making sure that you have that 50-50 split, that ethnic diversity in your event. It just reflects the population. I think one interesting thing, I think, is it CBBC, have said that they probably reflect the cultural diversity and gender diversity of the country better than anything else in the media, because of the diversity of their presenters. And that is what we would hope to see in every forum which is inspiring and helping people.
Brilliant stuff. So I was planning on taking a break, then doing a wrap-up. Would it be objective if we did the wrap-up and then we'll just go to a networking and coffee? Is that okay? I will add one last point on that, if that's okay. And I'm about to upset virtually everybody to my left, if that's okay. Kate was the first person I invited onto the panel. And Kate and I talked about this how long ago?
Oh, gosh, it's about 6 months ago.
6 months ago, Kate and I said, let's do something. And we didn't know what it was at the time. And I just found the other three slackers to tag along. So that's... Sorry, did that come out loud? I didn't mean that. But it was. I was enthused by Kate's knowledge and ideas and thoughts in the space. And I thought, do you know what we need? We need a diverse panel with different ideas. So we start with Kate and we built outwards, and we found three other fantastic panelists. They couldn't make it, so I asked these three instead. I'll keep going. I'll stop now. So now I've upset them all, I can step away. What I'm going to ask for is a final closing thought from each of our panelists. Anything that you think that we should be kind of concerned at or aware of or thinking about in technology and selling. What's the final thought you'd like the group to take away from today?
I'll just literally summarize it with, I've talked a lot about relationships today, and I think that's what we need to do, just continue relationships, and all this tech can't really beat a handshake or a high five or a hug. So yeah, just get out there, meet people. It's interesting in sales, when you do go and meet clients, you always come away with something, don't you? You always have a little half-day consultancy, or they'll buy another license, or they'll refer you on. That doesn't often happen with tech. So just get face-to-face and just keep creating relationships.
Excellent stuff, Ian. Thank you.
I think I'd summarise by saying it's remarkably easy to be remarkable online, but hardly anybody is doing it. Slow down a little bit, use the technology to serve you, and don't just use it to accelerate the number of people that you connect with, the number of people that you spam, the number of people that you broadcast to. Slow down and think about the human the other end. How would you like to be treated? All the technology is already there to make that easy, and it's really easy for you to stand out. So.
I suppose for me it's two possibly on the surface opposing thoughts. First of all, make sure you're still relevant and you're still going to be relevant. Watch out for the blockbuster moment in your industry. But also, and it's probably something that I've taken away from today, is the rules of the game of sales hasn't changed too much. Technology just enables us to do it better. So think about those first principles of sales, the relationship, the process, and use technology to enhance that, not replace that.
Brilliant, thank you.
Be aware of all the technology that's coming and how it is likely to improve your life, but don't get wrapped up in it. So be aware of blockchain, distributed ledgers, cryptocurrency, augmented realities, machine learning, artificial intelligence, they are going to change how you carry on the processes that have served sales well for many decades.
Brilliant stuff. And I think, firstly, thank you to you all for coming along this morning. Thank you for keeping the questions going far longer than I expected, and there's probably a few more that you might want to ask the panel over a tea and coffee. But could we put our hands together, please, and say thank you to our panel, Ian, Richard, Kate and Tim.